Many events led up to the Battle of Yorktown, which would later be known as the last battle of the Revolutionary War. June 1778. British evacuate forces from Philadelphia and occupy New York City as their new main base of operations. December 29, 1778. British forces capture Savannah, Georgia. 1779. Inconclusive fighting in the north develops into a military stalemate. Neither side can gain the advantage. Political considerations become critical as the question of the war becomes, who can outlast the other? July 1780. Rochambeau and the French army arrive in Newport, Rhode Island to join the Allied cause. January 17, 1781. British forces defeat the Copans, South Carolina. March 15, 1781. At the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, North Carolina, British forces win a technical victory, but are so badly mauled that they must cease operations. Cornwallis decides to leave the Carolinas and invade Virginia. His rationale? Virginia is the largest, most populated, and wealthiest colony. Virginia is providing supplies and reinforcements to rebel forces in the Carolinas, and the Virginia economy, particularly tobacco exports, is sustaining the war effort. Cornwallis believes that if he can defeat Virginia, American resistance to the crown will collapse. May 10, 1781. Cornwallis and his army enter Virginia. August 1, 1781. Cornwallis occupies Yorktown, planning to use the port as his base for resupply as he continues his Virginia campaign. Even as he sets up camp, Lafayette's spies bring news of the plan. Lafayette relays word to Washington.
In the Battle of Yorktown, the Continental Army was led by General George Washington. In 1775, Washington was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the American Revolutionary Forces. In 1789, George Washington would become the first President of the United States. In the Battle of Yorktown, the British Army was led by Charles Cornwallis. On October 19, 1781, after being defeated by the French-American army, Cornwallis surrendered to George Washington. At the surrender ceremony, Cornwallis didn't show up and sent his second-in-command, General Charles O'Hara. The beginning of the Revolutionary War battles were sparked by the colonists' refusal to abide to the British rule. The colonists felt they were being mistreated by the British, which were imposing unfair, unreasonable taxes and denying them rights.
The Revolutionary War disrupted the life for many women. The wives and soldiers either stayed home to take care of their children and run businesses, or they became camp followers. Many women became camp followers. Most were wives and daughters of soldiers and officers. They took on duties such as laundresses, seamstresses, cooks, and nurses. One brave woman named Deborah Sampson impersonated a man under the name of Robert Shirtliff and enlisted on May 20th, 1782.
My name is Deborah Sampson. I was born in Plimpton, Massachusetts on December 17, 1760. When I was young, my father left us. I was sent to live with my mother's cousin. I learned to read, at least. I became a servant. Took care of small children, took care of the house, did lots of physical labor, but at least I grew strong. In 1782, I bought men's clothing, and I bound my breast and deepened my voice. I claimed that I was a 15-year-old boy, and I joined the Continental Army. I enlisted under the name of Robert Shirtliff, but the men called me Bobby. Word spread back home what I was doing, and I was excommunicated from the First Baptist Church. And I was shot in the leg during battle, and it still hasn't healed right. But General Patton heard. He heard I was brave, and that I was so young. And he sent me a good horse, and fine equipment, and a feather bed. I had never been so proud.
She was later hospitalized from an illness and discovered by a military physician. Deborah Sampson was given an honorable discharge on October 25, 1783. She is now known as a legendary woman and the first American woman to impersonate a male and join the army.
The last battle of the Revolutionary War was fought at Yorktown, Virginia in October 1781. Yorktown was founded in 1691 during the 18th century. It was a huge tobacco port, as we know, is a main source of export goods during that period of time, and brought a lot of wealth. Virginia is between North Carolina and Maryland. Yorktown is only 22 miles away from Jamestown, which was the very first settlement. The Chesapeake Bay is by the Atlantic Ocean, which gave an advantage to the French, since it had a fleet. Yorktown was covered with water, which gave a swampy look.
During the American Revolution, the most common weapon used by both sides were the muzzle-loading flintlock musket. The British used the brown bass musket that has a 75 caliber barrel and used a 69 caliber ball. As for the Americans, they used the French-made Charleville musket that has a 69 caliber barrel and fire a 65 caliber ball. The most important part of the musket was the bayonet. Its purpose was used to take down horsemen, in which loading would be a trouble close range against a cavalry unit. Paper cartridges were mostly used by both sides. Some used a powder horn. The cartridge was made by rolling a paper around the ball and powder. The end was then tied with a string. When reloading, every soldier should be firing a shot every 15 seconds.
The Battle of Yorktown was historically significant mostly because it was the last major battle in the Revolutionary War. It proved to the British that the Americans were not going to be ruled by the British, that they had separated as a colony. Soon after, the British signed the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which recognized the United States and promised them to remove all troops from the country.
Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony. He stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with the girls be handy.